But on to our topic this week. Well, here's part of the problem. All of us have been crazy busy this week, in one form or the other. And while we've kept in touch, nothing really sparked our imaginations of what to be doing for this week. So we were literally at the last moment last night, and we still had nothing. So this morning, I thought, how about games that made an impact on us? I'm sure there's a simpler name than we can put this for the official video title, but these are games that aren't necessarily our favorites, but these are the ones that personally affected us, whether the storyline was just something that hooked us, it was a game that was ridiculously addictive, or just something that changed our minds about a genre, or possibly even games in general, like some mechanic that just blew our minds, even though it's commonplace now. I'll go ahead and start us out by saying Adventure for the Atari 2600. I was like 3 and 4 years old when I first got that thing, so it was more for my brother than it was for me. But that stupid game, as simple as it was basically just one of those maze things that you'd find on those placemats at like a restaurant or something. It turned into a video game with items. That's basically all it was. But there was something about that game, probably because it was one of the biggest as far as what you could do in a video game for the Atari. I mean, there was stuff like E.T. and Indiana Jones that had kind of a story thing going along with it, but people that's played those know that those were confusing as heck. Adventure actually made sense. You got the chalice, you brought it back to your castle, and you went through whatever puzzles you had to do to get to it. And you could take multiple routes.
And all the ducks.
And the duck dragons. And that evil, insane bat. The bat. But yeah, that would be my first. I'd played games before and since. Gauntlet. Now, this is a couple of years later. It was largely in the arcades that I first experienced this, but it was one of the first times I saw a 4-player game, and it just had so much to it for a game of its era. It, once again, was one of these wander around a maze sort of things, but it put more of a twist on some depth as far as working together, items to pick up that would temporarily help you, and the ingenious method of making your life your quarter. So it wasn't like you put in a corner, you get 3 lives like most games. This gave you a certain amount of health for every quarter you put in. So you could put in a whole bunch of quarters and have a whole bunch of health right off the bat, or you can wait until you're dead and throw in a quarter and continue and what have you. It was ingenious because people could throw away billfuls full of money trying to beat that game and not even realize it because they were still on the same life.
Wow.
Genius. So you had the 4-player mechanic, you had that. Ultimately, there's only been one real arcade maze game of that nature, and that was Gauntlet itself, Gauntlet 2. Oh, and it was one of the earlier games to use a lot of voice clips, too, which to this day, me and my brother continue to quote, "Blue Elf shot the food." Yes.
Oh man, see, I don't remember a lot of the names because I'm one horrible with names. This lets you destroys my brain. It makes it like a little pile of goo. So, man, I can't think of the names. That's a major problem with me. The one I can remember the name that I played a lot was Rad Racer. I mean, with that amazing 3D-ism on it.
Oh yes.
Those awesome glasses they gave you.
Squaresoft was ahead of its time.
Hell yes, they were.
3D World Runner and Rad Racer with the pressing the select button that made everything into 3D.
It either gave you a headache or gave you a seizure. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was awesome.
Technology. And then there was Crossbow. Now, there was a lot of light gun games. Matter of fact, some of the very first arcade games were light gun games, like that old Skeet Shoot that you pretty much only see in 80s movies at this point. Crossbow was one of the turning points for me, but Crossbow was weird because, first of all, you weren't the one taking damage. You had this crossbow, you had these characters that you would slowly recruit as you went through levels, and you basically tried to protect them from all harm as they walked across the screen in a very slow manner until you finally got to the final boss. And you could even choose what route you wanted to take, so if you wanted to pick up more characters before you got to the boss, you could repeat stages you've already been before. But here's the thing. I only played the game in the arcade at the local Food for Less maybe 5 times. But I've seen the game played a ton, and that's because I would actually give my brother quarters for him to play the game so I could watch him. So this was my first moment of realizing that I enjoyed watching people play games as much as playing them myself. Of course, I was awful with it. I'm like 5 years old, 6 years old. But yeah, this is where my watching game streams probably came from.
It was Chris's first shut up and take my money moment.
Yeah, that too. And while we're still in the 80s, Double Dragon.
Oh gosh, my first go at Double Dragon was actually on the PC, and believe it or not, my brother and I both played that at the same time.
It's a great 2-player game. Mm-hmm. In an era where they were first starting to really make a lot of 2-player games, I think largely because of the success of the NES. Because up until then, most of the 2-player games seemed to be like head-to-head, like Karate Master or Joust or stuff like that.
You know, talking about arcade, I did play a lot of the Ninja Turtle arcade games.
I was actually going to bring that one up because Double Dragon started my love for beat-em-ups, and it has probably never gone away. So it didn't matter what beat-em-up came along, whether it was good, whether it was bad, I tried to play them all. Even that horrendous Aliens vs. Predator there was on the Super Nintendo. Not the arcade one. The arcade one's awesome. But the Super Nintendo one that barely functions. And yeah, Ninja Turtles. 4-player and Muncher. It was Konami's heyday for arcades, was about that era. Because there was a lot of games that were kind of taking from the success of Ninja Turtles, because there was a sequel, there was the classic arcade X-Men that even had a 6-player arcade cabinet.
We used to go to Showbiz Pizza Hut like every 3 weeks or so, and me and my cousins easily spent $500 playing the Ninja Turtle arcade game over the time we played it. Easily.
The local Chuck E. Cheese and had such a successful run with that they had 3 of them, and they were constant.
Oh, wow.
There was always somebody playing it.
Always,
yeah. Our Chuck E. Cheese had that one too.
And The Simpsons was fairly popular about that too, but I think the original Ninja Turtles is the most successful out of all of them that they did.
I think it's the major reason my parents got me a Nintendo, because I was spending so much money on arcades. And I was like,
arcade games were coming home.
Yeah, because I mean, people were like, why? What? 4? And yeah, I did it all the time when I was always playing games. So
I remember playing the Simpsons game, but I don't remember much about it.
Well, part of the problem, it's never been a game that's been re-released on a major console. There was a PC one, and I keep hearing rumors that they're trying to get the arcade version on like PSN and Xbox Live. I don't think it's happened yet.
I beat Bart Simpson's Nightmare, and
that was arcade.
That was arcade. That was arcade at Skateland. I just remember I actually had a crowd of like 15 people watching me, and that's why my parents kept throwing money into the machine. Because I died like 20 times, so they spent like $40. That was actually the last time, because that was when I was 13. They're like, we are not doing that again, ever. Just to let you know.
But yeah, I was all up into the beat-em-ups. The final fights, didn't matter if it was a home console version or an arcade version, I was spending money on both them right and left. And then a game came along, and this is probably the biggest impact on my life as far as video games is concerned. And I'm sure I'm not the only one, but a video game came along. The same very people that did Final Fight, so I thought it was like a sequel to it. And I was watching it, and I thought, this doesn't play quite the same. I'm not sure I like the looks of this. I mean, you're fighting just one other guy. What's the deal? I mean, the art is kind of similar, the character design is kind of similar, but I didn't really get it at first, so I kind of just passed it up despite the fact the cabinets were always busy. And then I finally put my first quarter into Street Fighter 2, and things changed. I have been a fighting game fanatic ever since.
I think my first game that really, really got my attention was Final Fantasy 1.
I can see that, yeah.
Most of the time until then, I'd play a game for a couple hours, and then I'd go play and stuff. Final Fantasy was the first time that my parents got worried because I was playing so much in a day that they literally said, okay, you can play the game no more than 2.5 hours, and then you must stop. Or we will take the game away from you. And so, except for the weekends, I got to play 4 hours on the weekend. I
guess I was lucky in that regard. Usually my parents didn't limit my time with the video game so much, but I think it's because they enjoyed watching me play them.
Yeah. It was also, grades too, because I think it sort of affected my grades too. And they were just like, yeah, that's not going to fly.
I think that was more typical for a lot of parents because they saw the video game as more of a toy than anything. And so when somebody wasn't doing quite what they should be, and it was usually one of the first things to get grounded.
Mm-hmm. It didn't help that we even had a Nintendo and later on a Super Nintendo at our grade school, so you could play games on that too, and people would bring in games.
Oh boy.
Yeah, it got weird fast. Man, they decked out that Nintendo. That Nintendo had the 4 controller pieces, and they even had a couple of their own games on there. We had this interesting thing at our school that the entire class, by their grade, got points, and you can use the points to buy stuff at Scholastic and other places. And man, you'd be blown away at how fast our grades went up when that happened. Man, because that's some motivation there. Wait, if we all do really good, we could buy stuff.
Heck yeah.
I only remember stuff like that from selling whatever stuff your school wants you to sell, and you would get the rewards.
Yeah, we got that too. That's mostly what we bought stuff off of, the points. I think it was those organizations that got the school to do it. It was very successful. I think they said we had like a 25% markup in our grades, the whole school. This is from kindergarten to high school.
Where was that when I was going to school?
Yeah, I know.
But as far as Final Fantasy is concerned, was that pretty much your first RPG?
Yeah, that was my first.
I played Final Fantasy 1. I got Dragon Warrior through that great Nintendo Power giveaway thing that they did with their resubscription. I've played several other rentals, like Final Fantasy 2, aka Final Fantasy 4, Legend of the Ghost Lion, and all these other RPGs, and none of them really ever stuck with me. To the point that even though I enjoyed Final Fantasy 1, I never bought it, because I thought, because I had so much time to spend with just one game. It's not like it is now, where it's like 30 new games every week, 30 new releases. And it wasn't until Final Fantasy 3, aka Final Fantasy 6, that changed for me. It was the first RPG that really grabbed me and kept me there until the end, and I've replayed it like 6-8 times, which I cannot say that about too many RPGs.
Yeah, Final Fantasy 6 really. All of them seem to get me. Final Fantasy 2 Final Fantasy 4 really got me too. It arguably, to me, still has one of the hardest final bosses ever. It seemed like every other fight I ever had with him, he would storm, immediately followed by Meteor, everybody's dead.
I played a rental copy of it, and whoever had it before I did had ridiculously leveled out their characters, and I still could not, with the save file at the final boss, I still could not take him. Possibly because I'm pretty sure there's an item that you have to use. Isn't there a gem you have to use to weaken him? Isn't that part of it?
First you use the gem.
And I didn't know
and
that.
And then
so.
He takes his true form. And when he takes his true form, you're no better off, because he starts flipping out on you. I mean, I got everybody to level 99. I got Rydia, her OP weapon that does ultimate damage, is guaranteed every time you hit, and she hits rapidly. And he could still drop you like a rock.
I liked 6. That one probably is what sold me on RPGs.
Yeah, 6 is fantastic. I do admit that I played 6 more than I played the other ones.
6 is what got me going back into playing older RPGs that I didn't give a chance before, like the Breath of Fire series. Now I like the Breath of Fire series now, but
Breath of Fire, forgot about that.
And all those other RPGs, even the kind of really lame ones, I got into them because of Final Fantasy VI. It changed my opinion about them. And Chrono Trigger didn't hurt anything either.
Oh yeah, Chrono Trigger is just mind-blowing.
Yeah, that's another one for me.
Poor Mike, are we stealing your thunder by mentioning them before you do?
Secret of Mana.
Oh, yes.
Oh,
beat you to 1. Finally beat you to 1.
And I should have thought about this one because I could never quite get into Zelda despite the fact I love Zelda. Secret of Mana had the Zelda style, but it threw the Final Fantasy in there, and I loved it for it. Plus it was multiplayer, that didn't hurt me.
And it was multiplayer.
Yeah. Okay, shut up, Chris. Now you're doing it again. Let him talk.
That was the first RPG that I remember being multiplayer. I don't know if it was the first one, but
it's not far from the only one if you don't include MMOs.
Yeah.
It's still such an amazing game for how crippled it was for what it was meant to be and what they had to do, and it roughly lost more than half of its content when that happened. And it's still a mind-blowingly good game.
Great music. The dialogue is so laughable at this point. At the time, it was kind of standard, but to look back at it now, especially when you realize that this is the same company that brought us stories like Final Fantasy VI, not like a year or two later.
I still remember fondly spending hours upon hours upon hours trying to find the fourth character that was rumored.
I knew better than that one. Nintendo Power would have said something, if anybody.
Mm-hmm. I don't know, it was quite amusing. And I've already said this once before, there is a fourth character. If you go look into the ROM data, you'll see that there is a slot for the fourth character. It's just empty. And that's, they didn't have enough memory for the fourth character. Although the fourth character was developed. It was developed and completely done. And then they canceled the other system and had to cut stuff, and they had to decide, we can only have 3 characters.
Yeah, because it had some pretty big slowdown as it was with just the 3.
Yeah.
I could just imagine a fourth in there. And I imagine that fourth character also looked like somebody from Chrono Trigger. I betcha.
Yeah, it looked just like a black mage.
Oh, well, that would have been interesting.
Mm-hmm. It was supposed to be that him and the little sprite kid hate each other.
So sort of like Magus and Frog.
Yeah.
And while we're on RPGs, I'm going to go ahead and drop in there Suikoden. Suikoden changed so much for me, especially considering so few people seem to know about the series, and it's a shame, because even the bad one, which was Suikoden 4, was a great game in itself. That one was a bit more of a trudge, but all the rest of them, it had some great sweeping stories, it had some unique mechanics that you never saw anywhere else, not the least of which, 108 recruitable characters.
Good God.
Not that all of them actually joined your party, so to speak. Some of them were like shopkeepers, blacksmiths, stuff like that. And it was a mechanic they kept throughout all of the games. And I think that's part of where my love of recruiting things come from, which is why I don't quite understand why I didn't get into Chrono Cross more, because there was that same sort of recruiting mechanic in it, because it has like 40 characters in it.
Chrono Cross had the most retarding storyline ever. At first it was like, well, this is pretty cool, and then it just went nowhere.
I think it's a little brain bendy, but it's one of those brain bendies that so many anime get, where they think and they try to make it feel like it's a bigger brain buster than it really is.
Yeah.
They talk it up to be, oh my goodness, this changes my whole outlook of reality, when really it's just, parallel world.
Dribble. Yeah. I mean, I honestly didn't understand from the beginning. I was like, wait, what's going on? And I was like, where's Chrono?
Well, there's that too. But I didn't get far enough in the game for the big spoiler reveal, which I won't actually mention.
Yeah,
it's a pretty big deal. I mean, this is something that should have been a bigger deal than Aerith, in my opinion. Aerith, say it properly now, since they've untranslated her back into the original.
Mm-hmm.
There's another aspect of RPGs that's been a big part of my life, and it started with Final Fantasy Tactics.
Oh, yeah.
The tactical
Final Fantasy,
RPG.
yes.
Yes, Edna, and you know it. If it wasn't for Final Fantasy Tactics, I would have never gotten into games like Vandal Hearts and Karsha and Vanguard Bandit and all of those others that came out in that era. And then later on, Disgaea took all of that and made it so much bigger and better and excellent. And then threw in the quirky humor on top of it. So I have a lot of tactical RPGs. Even some of them almost aren't considerable to be tactical RPGs, like Future Tactics. That was a weird game. It was like one part Gunbound and one part Final Fantasy Tactics. Spin that one around in your head. It's like Worms. I mean, you're positioning your character, and then you aim your trajectory. It was weird.
Front Mission was also awesome. Kind of like Mech Warrior Tactics.
Mm-hmm. I should have played that so much more than I did. I have Front Mission 4 over there. I put maybe 30 minutes in it. Arrgh!
I played Front Mission 2, Front Mission 3, Front Mission 4, and then I quit playing them.
So you've never played the original? It seems like I've played a ROM of it. Quite a way, actually.
I never played the original. My parents got me Front Mission 2, and that's why I was just like, when I saw Final Fantasy Tactics, I was like, oh my god, it's a Final Fantasy version of Front Mission. And then I played it, and I was like, nothing like Front Mission. This is awesome.
I never really could get into the tactical RPG because I always tried to think more strategically than was required, and I would end up defeating my own self.
Sometimes there was such thing as overplanning, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never played Chrome Hounds either, so I don't even know what that game is.
I feel like I'm dominating this particular conversation, though, so let's have something.
You probably planned, and I had about much as planned as a gerbil.
I just wrote a bunch of stuff before my lunch.
Sure.
That's about all.
It was...
And you may laugh, but I know some gerbils who are on the verge of taking over the world, so...
Oh, yeah, that's true. Don't piss off those gerbils. Moving a little higher, now 7 was a really good one too, Final Fantasy 7. Mm-hmm. That really got me going. But then there was a game that a lot of people didn't really think much of, and that was Xenogears. Xenogears was awesome. And very, very hard.
I never played Xenogears, but I did play Xenosaga.
Xenosaga is cool too. The Xenogears...
Was it true that in that last level that you go through before the final boss that literally like almost every step you take is a random encounter?
Yes, yes. And very hard random encounters at that.
Man. And almost the entire game's like that.
Yeah.
There's a mine a canyon, I think it may have been a cave and a mine. It's right before the airship, I think, and that you've got to go through. There is no place to rest. There is no place to restock. You just have to survive. And if you don't, you start way back before the cutscenes and possibly even a couple of fights before you get down there.
Yeah.
That place irritated me. And that's fairly early on in the game. It's like...
And there's really... you're not high enough level that you got the repair items that you have on your ships that you can use once or twice every couple battles. You just pray, basically. Pray. Hope that you make it. But yeah, the boss for Xenogears, the final boss, I mean, he could be incredibly dangerous. He could wipe your party out in 2 moves.
That's a lot of RPG bosses, though. Final bosses.
Yeah. That's because most people were like, I'm going to ignore the 4 people floating around him and go ahead and just take him on. You're going to get annihilated by him if you don't know exactly
what you're doing. You almost always go after the underlings first, because they're usually the things that like heal him or enhance his attacks.
Yeah, he has 4 special abilities when you don't destroy them, and all 4 are extremely dangerous. But I've seen people beat him even with all 4, and it's mind-blowing when they do it.
I never made it quite that far.
It's actually it's very awesome to appear in the room that they're at. It's just like, oh, this is awesome.
And since we're getting closer to time, I'm going to head and bump us off of RPGs for a little bit and hit up the first-person shooters. I really did not get into any of the early ones. The Wolfenstein, the Doom, when a lot of first-person shooter guys got into first-person shooters, that wasn't me.
Doom, hardcore for me.
Me neither.
If you can count it, Mech Warrior.
You can kind of count it.
Yeah.
I think Unreal Tournament was actually the very first one that I even never played.
So that was kind of late to the party there. But then again, you were mostly a console gamer, I think.
Yeah, pretty much. We didn't have computers good enough to run the good stuff that was coming out.
Even then, I think it was like Medal of Honor, the original, and GoldenEye that got me into it. But as much as I played both of those games, I really didn't get into the genre itself. That didn't change until Half-Life.
Until 2003, I was pure consoles, because I didn't even have a computer until then. But, you know, honestly, and this makes everybody that I know that like it gasp, I hate Half-Life. And Half-Life 2. And the reason I hate them is interesting, because the fact is, I love running around and killing people on it. It's just when I'm getting going and everything's fantastic and I'm having a blast, suddenly this puzzle area pops up.
And that's exactly why I loved it. It wasn't the same old thing every time. It had the ambience and a mood, and I didn't like the later levels so much when he is actually jumping around on the alien world. That kind of seemed like it lost everything and it was turning into all the others that I didn't really care for. But
it drove me crazy. It really drove me crazy.
I wouldn't say I was a hardcore FPS fan. I don't think I'll ever be one per se, but Rainbow Six and Counter-Strike and Perfect Dark, and I was sinking a lot of hours into those series. Yeah, I'd really like to get a hold of Black Mesa. It'd be a nice way of replaying the original.
Halos. I played, until Reach, I played the hell out of Halo.
I never really enjoyed the Halo series as a multiplayer, but I did like playing it co-op with my brother.
Yeah, that's what I did. I didn't like the multiplayer much either. There's too many assholes.
That's online gaming in a nutshell, right there.
Pretty much.
Online gaming in a nutshell. I mean, that sounds almost kind of prejudiced, but it does seem like, you know, there's a lot of assholes in online gaming, and then you go to FPS, and there's way more assholes. Like, it seems like at least 35% more.
I think a lot of it is how the community accepts things, and first-person shooters are probably the worst about accepting really poor behavior.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That it's okay to cuss somebody out. As a matter of fact, there's videos where it's funny to cuss people out, or get cussed out, one or the other.
Yeah, I've never got on that stuff. It's just an oddity to me. I mean, yeah, there is, you know, sometimes you see someone rage. That's what I always call it. When they start cussing, they're raging. And it's fun to see someone rage. Like on ActRaiser when I started screaming about how the bird can go and
But when it's a common thing where it's just every other moment the person is making these mini rages, that's when it gets obnoxious.
Yeah.
Or when they're making these absolutely pointless taunts at you. I mean,
They're
thankfully,
like, oh.
I got out of the internet gaming mostly because it passed on beyond what I could keep up with. I was playing Counter-Strike on a 56K modem, so
Yeah.
I was in the era of chat, but even that was bad enough.
It's like when people lock onto you, you know, they just decide they're going to be a dick to you the whole game, and every single thing you do is wrong.
And usually the silent treatment is the best way to fix that kind of thing.
Exactly. I'm glad in League of Legends that they got the tribunal stuff and everything.
That is like night and day from when I saw it from watching you on the streams. I mean, yeah, they still complain at each other, but it is a much different field.
Yeah.
Very, very different.
It's
The
almost like the
community for-
insults are nice now.
Yeah. The League of Legends
polite.
community was notorious for being bad.
There's still a bunch of them, and even then, they seem to be holding back a little bit, because they know, oh man, if I go too far, I could go to the tribunal and lose my account. Because as you know, if you lose your account, you can make another one. I've seen that so far. But you get to start all over again.
Yep. And that's a big deal for some of these people, whether they put money into it or not.
Like if I got bound right now, I would lose $60. That's
Yep.
how much I put in so far.
How much of it was on skins?
I love my skins. So far, my favorite skin is Torix.
Gragas-esque.
Let's see here. Gran Turismo. That was something that kind of changed my opinion. Now, I've played racing games for a long time. The majority of the reason I got into them came kind of later on when I was babysitting my nephew and niece. And they were both really, especially my nephew. He's never gotten out of it, actually. As a big racing fanatic. So I was either renting games or I was trying to find 4-player racing games that we could play together and stuff like that. But Gran Turismo actually changed my opinion on racing games. And it didn't make any sense because most of the time, the more fantastic it was, like FX Racing, I enjoyed that one. But yeah, just the sheer amount of cars that you can unlock and tweak and how everything felt when you were actually driving it. They had weight behind them. It was just a weird experience that changed how I looked at racing games. I am not a
Gran
person who likes
Turismo
sports
3.
games.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Gran
3.
Turismo 3 was mine. I love that one. And then I skipped 4 just because it was kind of weird. And then I went to 5. And until it got stolen, 5 was awesome. 5 was
they recent-
mind-blowing. I mean, Gran Turismo 3, the engines sounded really good. And I'd love to sit there and just try to get myself as going as fast as possible to hear the engine. And it's because a couple of those cars have actually been in, like the Mustang, and it sounds like that.
Yeah, I love
and
the
it's
muscle
even better
cars.
in 5.
And it's kind of car related. I'll add Grand Theft Auto 3 in there. Not only was it my first experience with a true sandbox game as we know them today, and I tend to play a lot of those. It might even be technically my favorite genre at this point, second to fighting games. But there was so much about Grand Theft Auto 3 that changed the way I played games, because I wasn't really one of those type of people to goof off in a game that much until that one came along. And now I find ways of goofing off in games all the time.
Oh yeah,
But
that game, I had so many wars as the cops. It's just,
Oh yes, Vice City especially.
oh yeah, Vice City was even. San Andreas was a little harder because the cops
Yeah.
kind of got a buff, and they were kind of way more vicious.
And poor 4, they took all the fun out of it.
I hate 4.
I love 4's physics, but I hate how they did the cops. So I don't play it as much as I'd like.
I hate the cars. I hate the cops. I mean, cussing's fine because it's Grand Theft Auto, but man, they cuss so much to even people that like to cuss are just like, holy crap.
Yep.
But Vice City was the perfect one for me. San Andreas was really awesome, but still not as memorable as Vice City was for me.
I love the scope of San Andreas. It seems like the sound effects took a back seat. I don't remember the guns sounding nearly as good as San Andreas as Vice City's did. And that's kind of an impact when your guns sound decent as opposed to pop caps or something like that. I don't know what they were going for with San Andreas. It didn't quite work for me. I still prefer it. I think it's my favorite of the series, but I don't know. And I'll go ahead and dig in Red Dead Redemption in there, not so much as a game that really changed things for me, as to just prove that you can take an old concept and make it new, and it still works great. Matter of fact, it can work better for some people to play that than go back and play San Andreas or something.
I'm having a lot more fun with Red Dead Redemption than I ever did with any Grand Theft Auto game.
Ooh, Fallout?
Well, I'm saving my best for last.
Okay.
I got into the Fallouts early. I mean, a little later than I started playing when 2 was already 5 years old, so it was, and I still was just like blown away. Like, this is just amazing.
Well, it's a nice little combination of the RPG tactical games that we were talking about and something like the early Diablos.
And the quirkiness that in the game. That's
Yes,
just the
that
humor.
too.
The humor in this game is fantastic. I never get over it. Vegas had it too. I never had the radio on for Vegas because the radio broadcaster on that game was really creepy. He kept saying, I love you. What the hell?
Now, there's some weird propaganda.
Yeah. Vegas has such a wide weapon array that I could sit there for hours just trying to find weapons and then play with them. There was even achievements for getting certain types of weapons and upgrading them.
Well, I'll go ahead and mention my best for last.
Go for it.
I will too after you.
Mega Man X.
Oh yeah, the Mega Man.
How could I
never
not
played
know
any
there
of them,
wasn't
but I
going to
know.
be a Mega Man?
The way that it changed from the original series without the screen breaks except at the boss doors, the ability to move around in the level, the different abilities that you get outside of the abilities you get from bosses, it was just, it was like, this is awesome.
Took everything you liked about Mega Man, the original series, and amplified it.
Oh yes, Mega Man X is my favorite series. It pretty much changed how I grade other console games that are platforming kind of games like that.
Even outside the 16-bit era, I imagine.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a lot of people may argue that they're hard games, but there's a good balance in a lot of the X games.
Oh yeah,
It's
it's got that just right. I mean, it's easy for me to go through it now because I've played it so much. But typically a Mega Man X game, when it first comes out, it takes me a bit to recognize the patterns and figure out the weaknesses, and it's got that just right level where it's not so frustrating that I want to quit, but it's not so easy that I get bored.
Well, I've got two more quick mentions, and one of which is Knights of the Old Republic, the Star Wars
Yes.
RPG. The reason I
Yes.
mention it is less about the fact that it was a good RPG, and that the fact that it had an addictive quality to it. I wanted to know more about these characters. I wanted to know more about how they did the story and the setup, and it felt good to actually level up stuff because it felt like it was part of the story and not that I was just grinding for levels. And that had me hooked for a long time. And by a long time, I mean, when I say at Mike's for one particular weekend, most of the gameplay I did was with KOTOR. And then I bought it myself on PC, and it hardly worked.
Yep, I bet you regretted that decision.
Yep. But it never
I
came
sure
out for
as hell
anything
did.
else but the Xbox and the PC, so...
Yep. The level cap for quarter one is so stupid on the PC that it blows me away. What
It's
the hell
probably
were they
mods for
thinking?
it by now, isn't there?
No, it's hard-coded. You can't change it.
The level caps are different.
It's capped at 20. It will not go any higher. They tried to change it, and they said it's so hard-coded that if you try, it will just crash the game. And then in the second one, they seem to realize that they made a humongous mistake, and you can push your character's level as high as you can go, I think. I mean...
Well, it's good for people that want to out-level the difficulty, so if they're having trouble with an area, they can just level to get around it, which is a good way for a lot of people to actually take on games. I think the original KOTOR was trying to keep it all balanced, and that was one of their ways of doing it, that you could never out-level what you would be up against later on, and then they didn't have to do any AI algorithms to change their stats or their abilities or anything.
Mm-hmm,
So
that's exactly
it could work, but it did mean that you could never have a maxed-out character, and that's
They
probably
simply did that with the final battle on Quarter 2, that it doesn't matter that the final boss matches your stats, so it doesn't matter how strong you get, they will always be as strong as you.
Final Fantasy VIII style.
Final Fantasy VIII mode.
And I am surprised Mike didn't mention this one, but I'm going to. And that is Super Smash Brothers.
Oh.
Now, as somebody who's been a fighting game fanatic for a long time, there's kind of this regiment, this stylization of fighting games that has not really changed so much. It didn't matter if it went 3D or not. You basically had the Power Stone Arena style, and you had the classic one-on-one style. There wasn't much in between that until Smash Brothers came along. And I wouldn't say the game is balanced. I wouldn't say that the game is one of those types that you could put on your top 10 list. But as far as just pure fun, and especially for people that really bank into things like nostalgia or crossovers like I do, it's a dream come true. I would love to see more of these type of games. Even if it was a straight knockoff.
I hated Smash Brothers, and most people are just like... I remember Dad got it for me for the 64, and he was like, "You're gonna love this game." And I played 3 matches with him, and I was like, "I hate this game." And he was just like, "I had never imagined you'd hate this game," and I was just like, "I can't stand this game."
I loved it.
It's an acquired taste.
Neil tried to get me to play it on the Wii version, and I still hated it. I was just like, I hate this one even more than the other one.
I made people rage.
Yeah,
Mike is very good at it.
It's somewhere there.
And it was coming, so I'm going to talk about my ultimate.
Go for it.
SimCities.
Yes, I saw at least that or Civilizations popping up.
They go in about the same way to me.
Yep.
One's just a simulation where you have fight with each other. It's like SimCity is fighting. Just the stuff I've done with SimCities, and then everybody says 2000 was the best, and in my opinion 2000 was the worst. 3000, in my opinion, was the best so far. SimCity 4, I can't, it's just so flawed, even though it was alright, that I can't call it the best. Everybody's like, SimCity 5 is going to be the best. I've already tell by how it looks and, just the beta. I'm just like, yeah, this is going to be great.
I'm still worried about those city sizes. I was watching the guy with that beta over the last weekend, and he was doing a great job, but he kept running out of places to put things. He had to keep deleting things to make room for these upgrades that he needed. They were have-tos.
And SimCity 5 are medium-sized for SimCity 4.
Mm-hmm.
And this is interesting because SimCity 4, if you made large, you started having the memory leak issues majorly.
Yep.
So it's like, I swear, they ran into that issue again, and they're like, okay, we are not going to do what we did with SimCity 4 again. We're going to simply make it medium now and figure out what the hell is causing this and then go increase them later.
That was actually part of the thing when Ocean and Will Wright were speaking to each other. That was one of the things they mentioned.
That's just one of the minor things.
It's a minor thing, yeah.
I mean, but it just seems like, I keep telling everybody, they've already said they're going to fix this.
And because you mentioned it, there's a major game series that just came to mind, because I've played SimCity a lot too, but as far as games that made major impacts, The Sims. Not only did I play a ton of it throughout the 3 iterations of it, less on the Sims 3 side because I don't actually own it, but the other 2, not only did I put a lot of time into it, it changed the way I thought about video games, and even real life. Because I've mentioned this before in many, many episodes, that I have these little meters stuck in my head now of how to efficient my time. So yeah, that whole bladder meter thing we were joking about last time, that's still there. That's not going anywhere. And when you talk about games that change your life, how can you not include something like that?
It's just like my comfort meter is always so low. I'm always trying to keep it up, but it always bottoms out. And I sit there and I turn towards the screen and stomp my feet and make that annoying sound, and nothing happens.
No, you need a clown
player that controls me is a horrible person.
Oh. We are closing in on our time. So did you guys have any last games that comes to mind? I'm sure there's actually a ton if we actually sat down and thought about it.
But since I had like 3.5 minutes to get ready. So yeah, I think that's it for me.
How about you, Mike?
If I had to mention one more game, it would probably be the new Batman game.
Yeah, I can see that too. Now, would you consider that Arkham Asylum or Arkham City?
I would probably just start with Arkham Asylum. Because for a game that takes place in one area the whole time, it's pretty good. And it doesn't really get boring.
Yep. Lots to do.
Yep.
But I hope everybody enjoyed the show today. That is our show for March 2nd, 2013. I'm still thinking February. already a new month upon us. You can follow us on Twitter at PrinnyCast, and you can email us at PrinnyCast@gmail.com. Don't forget about those GalaxyBugs.com forums if you want to talk to us that way. And of course, the Twitch here. Twitch TV. Really? Yeah. PrinnyCast_Grover, where you can not only catch us every Saturday, somewhere between 2 and 6-ish, that you can also watch Grover play all these games that he's been playing. He can't always post on his YouTube channel. And as you can hear, he's playing all sorts of different stuff. It's been mostly League of Legends this week, but he's been known to go all over the place.
Yep.
He might even get back into some old school gaming before. He did play ActRaiser on here once.
Yes, I did.
And now that Mike's back with us, maybe we'll be more prepared next week for a big, full-on topic instead of going by the seat of our pants, because I think I ripped a hole in mine. And so that's our show. Join us next week.
See you guys later.
See you later.